Welcome to All Texas Football. Time for State of the Program, brought to you by our friend Adam Lowy. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by Rod Babers and Gerry Hamilton. Guys, for this week's State of the Program, I thought we'd talk about maybe where folks like ourselves overestimated this team this season coming into it. Because look, all of us thought Texas would be better situated right now than they currently are going into Arkansas. Thought we'd talk about that, some of the reasons that we may have missed on that. At the same time, what it all means looking forward and even into the Arkansas game and how it plays out there. But let's talk about the overestimation of this team. I just want to get quick, brief points for everybody. Rod, what was one of your big overestimations of this team?
I think I may have underestimated the losses. Having 23 players drafted in a 2-year span. This team does have talent, but it is inexperienced, and I think I definitely underestimated the impact of that inexperience. Right, with Arch and talk about the O-line losing so many guys. So I think ultimately that's a big part of it too. And I'll admit, I thought I was ready for Sark to take another step. In his evolution as a head coach, right? We talked about Starkey still growing as a coach, trying to get to that elite level and beat those elite coaches like the Ryan Days of the world, the Kirby Smarts of the world. And I don't know if we saw that this season either. Overall, considering how undisciplined the team has been, considering really offensively the regression we've seen from this Sark offense this season overall, especially in some critical moments. Lines of scrimmage, of course, even the quarterback development. I like it now. Actually, I like what I've seen from Arch lately, especially in that Georgia game. I thought actually was pretty composed and poised considering the situation. But ultimately, that took a while too. So I think that's where ultimately I may have overestimated and underestimated a lot of aspects of this team.
Gerry, what about you?
Yeah, I have three real things. One was what Rod talked about, Sark's continued kind of growth as a coach. One, and I said it all summer. I said this team hasn't quite climbed the mountaintop, so these guys would be really, really motivated this year. Because teams that are close, there's normally something there that's, dang man, we got to get this to the next level. And that's why I was so upset after the Florida game, because I saw the opposite. They already had a loss, and I don't think that team got off the plane understanding what they were getting into. And that's not that edge that you have to take it to the next level. And my third thing is simply the undisciplined football. And I'm not just talking about penalties. It's just the drops. It's Arch's mental struggles. It's busted. We're now in busted coverage land. I mean, it's like when I just never thought going into this year, and you don't get to see this in open media windows, and you're never going to hear about this in practice, right? Any practice things you hear, that a team is undisciplined. That only comes through in games. But I had a hard time believing that they'd be ranked in about 120 in penalties last year and get worse. That is one thing I did not see coming. And I know some people say, well, that's just a youthful team. I don't know, man. When you don't really show that edge like you should, and then you're undisciplined, I think those things kind of start fitting pieces together for me.
I think some of what y'all are saying actually fit together.
Yeah.
For example, Rod talks about the impact of losing 23 draft picks. Well, those guys were leaders of your team. Yeah. And so they were the ones that were striving to get to that next step. You have this, 8 new starters on offense?
Yeah.
They weren't out there being that close to playing for a national championship. It was a different group of guys. Same can be said on defense. And you're talking about, Gerry, you're talking about the coverage bus. Well, there's no Andrew Makuba and Jahdae Barron that were this close to a national championship and now starting. I mean, I think it's a lot of this. I do think that the youth plays a role in creating or not having that same mentality, right? That you're discussing. I would also add to this, I think, underestimating the need in the portal at certain positions, perhaps. The big running back type. I keep going back to this, but thinking that Cedric Baxter would eventually get back there, or that Jarrett Gibson would be good enough to fill that role. That was a poor estimation. Offensive line, although I think they went after one, they didn't land one. You blame that on whoever you want, but the reality of it is, in retrospect, you thinking yeah, they probably should have gotten more done on the offensive line. And then I think the secondary is showing it right now. They went so heavy at defensive tackle, and I think they did really well. So I think Texas did well in the portal last year.
The guys they got, they did very well.
Yeah, exactly. So I think they did well. I think they underestimated just how many more they needed to compete at the highest level, because they were counting on some guys to step up, like Jalen Gilbo, who by the way, on a starter, just hasn't necessarily been in that category that you need to be to compete at that level. And then to Jerry's point, you overestimate at the start Arch Manning being truly ready. He wasn't fully baked when he came out, ready, and the number of receivers that they had that had not created any kind of camaraderie with him because they were out during the spring and even some of the summer. And the list goes on and on. There are a lot of reasons, I guess is the best way to put it, that we overestimated them. Okay. But I think there are things we can look forward to out of this group as we look forward to next year. And so what are our takeaways now? Just stripping everything away and looking at 2026, they will return 7 or 8 starters on offense next year, 6 or 7 starters on defense. We think, if the portal's kind to them and they don't have attrition. Are they fit to compete, at least right now, with some key pieces in the portal? Are they fit to compete next year if they address some needs in the portal? Rod, what do you think?
I would say what I like that's kind of returning. You're talking about what's promising for next season, even though they're going to lose, some pieces on defense. I think the pass rush. One thing that everybody seemed to be accurate about was the pass rush was going to be legit. It was going to be one of the best in the country. It has turned out that way, even though it actually started kind of slow. I think the pass rush is going to be strong again. I mean, you look at, guys like Lance Jackson and Colin Simmons, and like we said, with Justice Terry, he looked really good in that game in Georgia. I think it's going to, Brad Spencer, another guy coming back who also can provide some pass rush ability. I think that's another thing that if I had to, jump out on a limb and predict something that Texas is going to be good at next year, I think they'll be good at pass rush again. I do. I think these guys I think Colin Simmons will get even better. I think that group is going to be formidable.
What do you think, Jerry? What is it? For me, it's Arch Manning a little bit. And that continued maturation, because we've seen him get better throughout this year.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's Arch. If you're just talking about offense, it's Arch Manning and Ryan Wingo. I mean, Arch Manning needs Wingo to come closer to maximizing his talent. I mean, that's just a fact. Arch Manning, obviously, this next year should be the year he makes a really big jump. And that's why all of us have never bought into this one and done stuff. We all knew that was just clickbait BS. That's not the way the Mannings operate, but they also knew he's not going to start 14 games to go to the NFL. He's not going to be ready. So yeah, I think Arch will take a big step next year. They need Wingo to take a big step next year to really closer to maximizing his talent level. I think that's a big thing because Emmett Mosley's really good football player.
Yes.
Really good. Parker Livingston will have a year under his belt. Dalen McCutcheon will be a sophomore. We'll see what else happens there. DeAndre Moore, may have a decision to make. We'll see. NFL or not. See if those young receivers continue. Look, I love the young tight ends. I think the tight ends. I think Nick Townsend and Emery Winston. I don't know what injuries will do next year, but I know those guys are going to be players. Mm-hmm. I mean, if they develop, and Nick Townsend's too good of an athlete not to be. I think the running back position will be better next year. However you put that together. But again, it's going to be hard after this year for me to go out on that limb until I see disciplined football. I mean, because you're just not going to be elite and take that next step if you're an undisciplined football team. Just look at sports. It just rarely happens.
I would agree with you to some level there, Jerry. I would add, I mean, injuries is likely going pro. He's a 4th-year player. Yeah. He's likely going pro. Jordan Washington at tight end as well. That's a pretty strong 3-man group. To your point at tight end. So what do we think they need to kind of maximize? I mean, That's the bigger thing that I'm like, do they need a big running back? I mean, there's no mistaking that even though everybody can pile on that Sark hasn't created this power run game the last 2 years, really, a lot of it has to do with the type of running backs he's had at his disposal. I still believe that. He hasn't had the running back that runs the inside zone. I mean, heavens, he tried that against Georgia and he ended up with a negative 8-yard rush for Trey Wise. I mean, with Cedric Baxter unhealthy, he just hasn't had that the last 2 years. It's the worst year ever for a rushing team by Steve Sarkisian. So I think they need a big running back somewhere, somehow. They need a couple of offensive linemen, most likely, especially on the interior, right? Guard, center, guard.
Secondary.
Secondary is huge. Probably need a big over-the-ball nose tackle type. What Rod, is there any pressing need that you say, God, they got to have this to really compete next year?
I think you're right about the O-line. I think they need some help on the offensive line. I know the running game, obviously, it's related to the running back. You're talking about having a bigger back in there if you want to run some of those power concepts. But I think that's one of the things that one of the great miscalculations, if you will, for the coaching staff was, our O-line, they're going to be all right. They'll gel as the season goes on. And they allowed 30 pressures versus a Georgia unit that was outside the top 120 in pressure rate. When you play Texas, you become an elite pass rush. That's just that no matter where you are ranked. So pass rush, that also, we know that Texas can't run the ball effectively versus elite teams and versus physical teams. They can't do that either. So I think they got to start with the O-line. They got to make sure this offensive line can at least be competent and capable in the run game and pass blocking. And then you can maximize all those weapons you have on the outside. And then I think it would help your running backs, no matter what size they are. But right now, with the offensive line issues they have, I don't think any of the weapons they have on offense will truly be maximized because that offensive line is too much of a liability.
Yeah. What about you, Gerry? Any place you would start in particular?
Commitment to run. We talked about players.
But no, we're talking about portal specifically.
Well, that could be part of it. Let's see. I would say corner is probably a big one for me.
Cornerback.
I really think so. Because I think Cade Phillips has a bright future, right? But I believe Manny Muhammad will be gone, right? I think his plan has been a 3-year player, right? So he's gone. So you're looking at if Jelani McDonald if he goes, you're losing your whole secondary.
Yeah.
And you're losing both of your corners. And while Cade Phillips is really good, who's your corner opposite? A lot of that may come down to what are you going to do with Grayson Littleton? Is he a nickel? Is he a corner?
Mm-hmm.
If you say we're going to make the move the corner a year earlier than they did with Jahdae Barron, then a nickel becomes something that potentially is an really experienced nickel. Because even though Andrew Makuba played safety, he could have played either.
Yep.
You need somebody like that out of the portal this year that can be an either or, a safety or a nickel, in my opinion. Because here's the thing with Jonah Williams. I think some people are just saying, oh, well, Jonah will be ready next year. He's playing baseball come, I don't know, mid-January. He's not going to go through spring practice. So he's going to be on campus 2 spring practices and not go through spring practice. So his development is behind other players. And he's a great talent. But I think it's for the plug and play of that guy, I'm not sure you can say that. I think you better give yourself some cover there because he's in baseball.
Yeah. You got to see what happens with Jelani McDonald, too. That's a big piece of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Taft will be gone. Interesting, you mentioned corner and nickel. One player that started and played quite a bit early in the year, but has not played much at all lately is Wardell Mack. So to Gerry's point, if you do make the decision to move Grayson Littleton out to corner, there's no heir apparent right now at nickel, to my knowledge.
Yeah.
So that could, to Gerry's point, say, hey, how do we reconstruct this secondary? And how do we build it? I think those are good points. But O-line, secondary, big running back, in my opinion. If they don't think, and maybe Derek Cooper's that guy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if they think him, or I just don't think they can I'll say this about Cedric Baxter. He could have been that guy. I don't think you can rely on him to be that guy for a third year and miss.
No, you can't.
You can't. Then, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice.
Yeah.
That's where they fool me 3 times, and it's your own fault. And so I feel like even if he's a team leader, like we think he is, they can't go into next year with that category. So those are some. We'll see if they can improve. More, not exponentially, but more incrementally at other spots. I think with losing Travis Shaw and Cole Brevard at nose tackle, they're going to need that over the ball guy, probably Gerry as well, to kind of give Alex January, Murad Watson, some of those younger guys, Sharma and Charles, an opportunity to develop too. But taking all this into account, what do we say about this Arkansas game and how some of these issues can be somewhat answered or somewhat exposed this weekend? In other words, why is this Arkansas game, in y'all's opinion, maybe somewhat of a proxy for what we think we might see in the future? Is it, Rod, you mentioned early on youth and inexperience and overestimating maybe the losses. Gerry, you mentioned that mentality of, hey, you thought they were going to come back.
Yeah.
Is that what we may not see? Is that if we don't see the killer mentality against Arkansas and we just see a Florida-like performance of hey, we're here, we showed up, we got Texas on the front of the jersey, that maybe and culture is not the right word for that, but motivation, desire, is that what we're really looking for against Arkansas to kind of shine through? Rod, what do you think?
First of all, I'll start with the defense, because I think for the defense, this is going to be a Herculean task to stop this Arkansas offense. It is, if you look at 10 and 20 plus yard plays generated, they're top 5 in the country. They produce a lot of explosive plays. They got a quarterback that can improvise, great in second reaction. Taylor Green is really explosive in the run game and as a passer. And Bobby Petrino is one of the best play callers out there. And they've watched the last 2 weeks of this Texas secondary with coverage busts and leverage busts, and also Texas not necessarily playing as a unit on that back end. And honestly, I think they might come out throwing the football. I think Texas knows that. So I think for the secondary, it's a huge test for them, considering, what we watched last week versus Georgia and what we saw late in the fourth quarter versus Vanderbilt. They really have kind of lost their way recently. They're not playing as a unit at all, and they haven't made any plays on the football. It's kind of been my big criticism. Like, hey, I know guys get beat. They're on scholarship too, but you're not making any plays on football. You're not even close to making plays on the football now. Now you're busted coverage. Guys are running free. This is a pride game for them. And I would, with all the leaders we got, we just talked about how the secondary could be losing everybody, losing Taft, losing Jalen Gibble, losing Jelani McDonald. This is one of the last times you're going to play a DKR. Man, I would be, honestly, to me, I'd be embarrassed and ashamed to come out there, one of your last performances, and get lit up by one of your rivals in the secondary. So I expect a bounce back performance by the secondary, at least one that's more stabilized, and you don't have the coverage bust. You might get beat, but the coverage bust and the lapses in leverage, that's something they got to clean up.
That sounds like you're talking about pride, Gerry. Having pride in your work. Is that really what we're talking about here?
Yes.
This can't be a letdown game, and that tells us more about what this team is going to be in the future, maybe?
Personally, it's pride. From a coaching standpoint, you're looking for complete buy-in, because the toughest thing in college athletics, I think, going right now for a coaching staff is these guys are talking to agents during the season, on game weeks. We're coming down to the wire. What's that contract going to look like? Hey, I think you should go into the portal. Can you imagine the conversations some of these kids are having with agents during a college football season right now? You're looking for buy-in. I think you're really evaluating where your buy-in is. Who are the guys you really believe are bought in right now? And this is a buy-in game. This is a buy-in week of practice. This is a buy-in game. And for the players, it's about pride. Their families are sitting in the stands. That's a Rod, Tony Hills, Marcus Myers, anybody we have that played here, that's what you're playing for pride. Mom's in the stands, dude. You're wearing that jersey with her name. I mean, that stuff's got to matter for you personally. But I think the other side of this, where college athletics has really changed, these dudes talk to agents. And there's a lot of conversations that are being had. So you have to be completely bought in outside the business of college athletics.
Yeah.
Yes, I completely agree. And here's what I would add to that, Gerry, is that Texas needs to know for next year, who those guys that can separate those two things.
Yeah.
And still lay it all on. They can talk to agents all they want. We can't stop that. New age college football can't stop that. Hell, the NFL can't stop it and has never been able to stop it, right? My point is that find and identify those guys that can separate those two things. And when the football gets put on the field, they go find the guys that, to use Kirby Smart's term, they want to be dogs. Yeah, I think that's what Bob Shipley said on Monday too, and that's what Brian Irwin said. They want to be dogs. Go find those guys that, regardless what's going on behind the scenes with NIL, or I want to be here next year, I don't. That's BS. When you get in between those white lines, it's up to you, buddy. You are what the film you put out there. All right, Dad. Before we let everybody go, I want to say thanks to our sponsor. That is Adam Lowy over at the Lowy Law Firm. If you've been injured in a car wreck, truck wreck, automobile accident of any kind, and think you might be due compensation from 18-wheeler to ATV, reach out to Adam and his firm. They'll give you a free, no strings attached consultation to see if you might be due compensation. Again, that is loweylawfirm.com. Adam, thank you for your sponsorship of On Texas Football and all of your sponsorships across multiple UT athletics sponsorships. Adam, just a guy that really gives back to the University of Texas in many different ways. All right, Gerry and Rod, thank you all for this episode of Say the Program. I thought it was a pretty good one. Actually, we got into some deep dive a little bit there that talked a lot about the intestinal. I use this term in college football this morning, intestinal fortitude. It's even more than that. It speaks to the ethos of who you are as a program. I like where it's going. All right. Yes. All right, guys. Thanks, Gerry. Thanks, Rod. You guys have a good one. We'll see you a little bit later on Bingham's Bourbon Breakdown. And then again tonight on the live stream for Gerry, Rod. I'm Bobby. Hook 'em horns.